Welcome back to the Lazy and Entitled Podcast, the podcast where we talk about life from the writer's perspective. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Corlew.
And I'm the other host, Brendan Johnson, and this is episode 2 of the Spooky Show, or whatever we called it before, the Creeptacular.
Who cares?
Yeah, I don't know. I hope you enjoyed the last one. We're excited about this one. Tons of good stuff ahead.
I said who cares about whether we called it Creeptacular or whatever, but I do not say who cares about the content of these episodes. We got some good stuff coming for you.
Yes, so buckle up, get some candy, and prepare to be...
Get some popcorn in a big bowl that you can spill when there's a jump
Spill
scare.
just everywhere.
This is a
Leave
podcast
the Jiffy
with jump
Pop
scares.
on the stove, baby.
And answer your landline, because we're podcasting.
All right, here we go. Welcome to Scream Talk.
Welcome to Scream Talk. Yes.
Yeah, we're huge fans of Scream. We are going to talk more about Scream in the future, like we intimated in the other segment. This one is going to be just kind of surface level. We're not going to deep dive into any specific movie, but we're going to do our rankings, kind of what we think about the franchise, what they're doing, and where they might go with it.
Yeah. Just to be very clear, Scream Talk won't be an every episode segment, but it will be a segment for as long as this podcast exists. I don't think we're ever going to run out of things to say about Scream, so we're going very surface level.
Yeah, this is going to be a kind of intro to Scream from our point of view, probably. So I don't know, we didn't talk before this about how we were going to go about our rankings. Should we just do one of us at a time and talk about it, or... should we do our slots? That might be confusing, but...
Yeah, we should have talked... It crossed my mind to talk about this before we started, but I think we should go worst to first, and I think ours might be similar enough to kind of go at the same time, I think.
Yeah,
we differ in some ways.
We differ in the middle.
Yeah.
But I know the beginning and end are the same.
Yeah.
So we can definitely start. You want to start at our lowest ranking, and this should not be an indicator of quality. We love all the Scream movies.
It should be noted that this last place is a very good movie.
Yeah, I like this movie a lot. It's just if I had to put one at the bottom, this is the one I put at the bottom.
And it's a fairly easy decision for both of us.
Oh, for sure.
It's Scream 3.
Scream 3, down at the bottom. I love Scream 3. I love the completion of the original trilogy for so many reasons.
Yes.
But just if I had to pick.
I think what Scream 3 does really well about, like, the sequels always have to reveal something that you didn't know previously. Mm-hmm. I think what Scream 3 does, maybe with, like, a few, retrograde early 2000s sexual politics, but, like, what it does with Sydney's mom's character to sort of change the way you think about the first two movies, I think is the best any horror trilogy has ever, or any horror franchise has released previously unknown information.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily reverse the kind of slut-shaming of, like, 1 and 2, but for 2000, like, what it does do of, like, adding context to her character...
yeah, and, like, just it does give her some depth. She still doesn't get to speak for herself, but it does give her character some depth that previously wasn't there.
Yeah, for sure.
Or was shrouded in rumor.
Oh, I guess we should say, like, we're about to spoil just every Scream.
Yeah, spoiler for every Scream.
I'm sorry,
Spoiler
if you
for every
haven't
Scream.
seen them, you just shouldn't listen to this segment.
But yeah, Scream 3's good. The killer's very funny at the end.
Our only single killer.
But yeah, he just has a crazy, like, eyes that I really find funny when his mask comes off.
We have some good faces in that movie, some good actors.
Yes.
Showing up. Carrie Fisher's in that movie.
Carrie Fisher's got a great segment in that movie.
Yeah, I was going to look here, see who else shows up in that movie. Lance Henriksen's in that movie. Parker Posey. Jenny McCarthy. Yeah, we're stacked with some, like, late 90s, early 2000s folks. Patrick Warburton's in it.
That's right. Patrick Warburton is in it. All right, number 5. Why don't you go?
For me, my number 5 is what you would refer to as Scream 5, Scream 2022. That's my number 5 spot.
That's almost my number 5 spot. My number 5 spot is Scream 4.
I know, and I'll never forgive you for it. But
you love Scream 4, and I can't wait to talk about it more. Why is 5 so low for you?
I think in this recent rewatching, 5 and 6 I haven't seen as much as the other ones, of course.
4, 5, and 6 I've only seen twice.
Okay. I've seen 4 a ton, but 5 and 6, yeah, I've seen twice each. And I think that upon this recent rewatching, I found that, like, if I'm comparing them parallel to what they're supposed to be doing, you know, I enjoyed Scream 6 as, like, the Scream 2 more than I enjoyed Scream 5 as the, like, Scream 1. If that makes any sense as all as, like, the start of a trilogy or whatever.
That totally makes sense.
I don't love the performance by the friend who's revealed to be the killer.
Yeah, he's
No, not the boyfriend, the friend.
Oh, her. She's Honora.
She's in
Mikey Madison, I think is her name.
She's in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yes.
And,
yeah.
That
new movie looks pretty good.
I don't know why I don't love it. It just, maybe it's one of my less favorable performances of the series, maybe.
Sure. I will give 5. I do feel like there's a little bit more forced dialogue than in a lot of the other ones. I feel like some of the early stuff, like the first couple of times we see the sisters, it's a little strange. Like they're interacting with each other, but maybe that is like the two characters haven't seen each other in a few years. But I don't know. I feel like there's some forced dialogue in
Sure.
5.
I with this criticism, ultimately 5 does have my favorite kill, and
5 has some great kills.
And the performances by Melissa Barea and Jenna Ortega are insane.
Yeah, they're both
so
awesome.
good. I'm so certain. You feel like these are sisters. Like the stakes just feel very high. I love their performances in both 5 and 6. I'm going to miss them in 7.
Yes, I do want to say I'm not trying to disparage their performances in either way. I just think there's a couple like times where the writing is like
for sure
skips a beat or so. But yeah, the two of them are awesome. They play hugely into why I have 5 and 6 so high on my rankings. Yeah.
All right, so you put 4 down there.
I put 4 as my number 5 spot, and on my number 4 spot, I have 5, which we just talked about. What's your number 4 spot?
My number 4 spot is Scream 2.
Scream 2, okay.
Which I do, again, all of these, like Scream 2 is probably one of the best franchise sequels of any horror movie.
The whole franchise doesn't work without Scream 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the way that it's like, the way it does the sequel thing of like, okay, now you got to expand it, was just, the introduction of Stab is just next level. Like
genius.
It's so good. And Scream 2 has that, I know we've talked about it, but that opening sequence I personally love. You have to suspend some disbelief about all of the elements of it.
Yeah.
But like Ghostface aim is incredible through a partition.
Yes,
with a knife.
Yes. Yeah, the opening sequence is incredible. It is like kind of operatic and over the top. Like some of the like, not even the performances, but the line. Well, I don't know. Jada Pinkett is like going for it, but some of the lines they have to say do read like this is the first time a horror movie let black people talk. So,
yeah.
But it for what it is and does, like. It's such a perfect opener. And then, the rules and the expanding, the little back and forth Dewey and Randy have about, like, why do you have a limp? And he's like, severed nerve. But Randy was saying it is like, I suspect you of being the killer, like you're hiding something or something. It's just like so good. Like there's, it sets up everything 4, 5, and 6 do by talking about the rules so much. And I know 1 talks about the rules, but like it lays out what the whole franchise is doing, and like 1 had to be a perfect slasher movie, which it is. 2 then had to like lay out the argument for the franchise. Yeah. And 2 does that.
What's in your 4 slot?
My 4 slot is 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then 2 is my 3 slot.
Awesome. All right. My 3 slot is 6.
6. All right.
On this most recent rewatch, I was so delighted.
It's so good.
Just in the way that, like, I love how if we're looking at the first trilogy, or what you and I would call the first trilogy compared to the second trilogy, of, like, the second one, we're in a new location at college.
Yeah.
And to do it in New York City, so distinctly to put it in New York City, there's a reason that you don't really do There's a reason that so much horror exists outside of urban areas because there's just so many people, and it's hard to make it like work. And they make it work really well. The subway scene is so sick.
The subway scene is like it makes me sick because of how like scary it is. Even on my second rewatch, I was like, "Oh God, I can't watch this." And I'm never like that with horror movies. It's so good, and yeah, it's like refreshing to see horror in the city. Like the scene where they're like laddering across between apartment buildings is incredible. Yeah, I get why it's hard to pull off, especially since, you know, if horror is about like atoning for our sins, then all our sins are in the country. As a nation, all of our sins are in the country and the suburbs, especially the suburbs. But it's refreshing to see a city segment. I am in the midst of my first ever like barreling through all Friday the 13th, and I haven't gotten to Jason Takes Manhattan yet, but I'm excited about it. So until that pending, Scream 6 is the best horror movie set in the city.
It's crazy to see Ghostface with a shotgun in a bodega.
It's
like
nuts.
That is at that point it's like, I don't know, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but it's really cool to like see like where the franchise goes when it reboots itself, compared to like with modern tastes and the way that other reboots are behaving, like the way that it's like, oh right, we have to like dial back a little bit on the like goofiness of it and make it a little more brutal or whatever. Very cool. My number 2, are we on number 2?
Yeah, let's keep going. Your number 2
is Scream 4,
which is the only one we haven't really talked about besides the first one. So.
And your number 2 slot is 6.
Yeah, I have like 1 and 6 kind of tied for first.
Yeah, 4 is
but
kinda...
with edging for 1. So if I had to, 6 would be my 2. So let's talk about 4. 4 is my second to last, and your second to first. And for me, the second to last is it had to go somewhere.
Right.
And I like Melissa Barea and Jenna Ortega so much that I weight 5 and 6 a little bit higher than 4. Hayden, I can't say her last name, is fucking awesome in 4 though.
She's awesome in 4. Pretty rough in 6.
Pretty rough in 6.
Pretty rough in 6.
Pretty rough in 6. Say. She is. I watched them like kind of like right in a row that when I did my second viewing, and I was like, wow, she is a force in 4. She's like on top of everything, and she's like the coolest kid in school. And then by 6, it's like, oh, sure, yeah, I guess you're an FBI officer.
Yeah. But it's very cool that they brought back a legacy character. Sorry, this is getting back to 6.
Yeah, I'm glad they brought her back.
It's cool that they brought back a legacy character and didn't make them the killer.
Yes.
Like oh wait, no, you didn't see her die, and the rule is you have to see them die.
Right.
And that's why we're not sure Stu Macher is dead. We only saw a TV hit his head. We don't know that he's dead.
Right.
We know Billy's dead. We saw a bullet go through his head, but like we don't know for sure that Stu Macher's dead.
And the new movies do seem to make a point of like people forget Stu Macher.
Yeah.
They seem to make a point of that.
Yeah. 4 for me, and again, this is getting a little bit ahead of ourselves on what we're going to talk about next, but to me it's the bridge movie between 2 trilogies, and like and also / it is like a mid-late installment the way that other movies have that. But it does it better than everyone else. I can't think of a fourth movie in a franchise that does what it does.
Yeah, they just
and the way that we needed it when we needed it at 2011. Again, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but the way that like it had to talk about the decade before and give permission kind of for the next decade, which just rocked ass, you know, and put us where we're at right now. So that's why I love Scream 4. We got a Culkin in it.
Love seeing a Culkin. Anytime I get and like I love those 2 film dudes are like we're the perfect film dudes, like in the sense that like, you know, being someone who watches a lot of movies, I won't call myself a film dude, but like I was like, you see them on screen, you're like, oh yeah, I'd like to talk to those kids, and then they're like around for like 3 minutes, and you're like, I don't think I want to spend too much time around those kids. What'd you think of Emma Roberts as trying to be new Neve Campbell? Because I thought she was really successful, but I have thoughts about Emma Roberts.
Well, sure. So I don't know if I have. I can't really decide. I can't think offhand where I've been like, I loved Emma Roberts in that movie. I can't think of being like, I hated her in that movie, but any movie, I mean.
Yeah.
But I liked it because she's not the new Neve Campbell.
Right.
They set it up like that, and then they're like, no, she's not.
Yeah.
And I really liked how they do that. I also like how the movie does so much of trusting the audience of like, you're down for this, right? You're down for the ride. And so like shooting the movie, the way the movie's shot and presented to you, the audience, of her being your leading lady, your final girl, is so cool for when they finally reveal that it's not.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And I thought the relationship she and Sydney build over the course of the movie feels organic. Like, they go from, like, I know who you are, but, like, we never see each other, to, like, okay, now we're in this situation that, I guess you know how to navigate, so, like, I'll trust you. Like, you know, you're seeing this, like, play out. And they kind of build it up, like, to where, like, oh, yeah, these two are really becoming, you know...
Like family.
Yeah, they're becoming family. And, you know, then, of course, it gets flipped at the end. But I thought that was really good. Yeah, my Emma Roberts thing is, like, I think because the first thing I saw her in was the last season of American Horror Story I watched, which is the third season. And she... I don't even know if this is really her fault. I feel like she's, like, a pretty solid scream queen, but then there's, like, something, like... slightly too prim about her too, or maybe like, I don't know. I guess she's a little bit like who's that guy in Ready or Not? Adam Brody, the guy who's in the OC.
Yeah,
where it's like you are definitely at your best when you're playing like a spoiled rich kid who gets their comeuppance kind of thing.
Yeah,
because there's just something about her that gives me those vibes. So like, and I haven't seen her in much.
Yeah.
It's like Scream 4 and American Horror Story and maybe like 2 other movies. I don't even know what they would be. I'd have to look at her IMDb page. But the second time around when I was watching Scream 4, because like the first time around I didn't even recognize her with the dyed hair. That's how bad I am at faces. But watching it the second time around, I was like, yeah, this is solid. Like, and you were having your little Scream Queen moment back in 2011 or whenever this was filmed. Because like that was around the American Horror Story, or like just before American Horror Story. So I was like, yeah, you did. This is pretty solid. Like, good for you and your like Scream Queen like resume. You know?
Well, I have to tag on there and say I love Adam Brody in Scream 4. As
that's
the cop,
right.
The cops,
he is in Scream 4.
The cop scene's delightful.
Yeah.
Also has the crazy opening sequence. I love the layers of all
that's
the
so
stabs.
good. It's so good.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I also, and I may be wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll cut it out. But in one of the stabs, Ghostface says, "Do I sound like a fucking Trevor to you?"
Yes.
And then
in the next Scream,
in actual Scream 4, the movie that you're about to watch outside of Stab, her boyfriend is named Trevor.
Yes.
Which they do throughout the movie, and we'll talk about in depth whenever we break down each movie, because they do it in every movie where they're just like, get it?
Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah. Which, and we'll talk about more later, but Stephen Graham Jones does in the Indian Lake trilogy too, which is great.
Nice.
Does that naming, like slasher goofiness, but that's neither here nor there. Speaking of opening sequences, I would be remiss if, for my number 2 slot, we didn't talk about my favorite Scream Queen, Samara Weaving's opening sequence in Scream 6. I know that's completely changing the movie and subject, but great opening sequence. She rules. I'm glad she got a Scream part.
Scream 6, man. When that kid pulls the Ghostface mask off, I was in the theater just like, what the fuck is going to happen?
That was me at home too. And when he's talking to his roommate and he's like, or who he thinks is his roommate.
Yeah.
He's like, it felt like she wasn't a person. I was like, oh my God, okay, this is what we're doing with Scream now.
New territory. Yep. So, and at the top of our list, kind of doesn't even need to be said, is Scream 1.
Scream 1. We should do a whole Scream talk on Scream 1, but...
And we will, yeah.
Perfect slasher.
But yeah, it's why it made it into my get to know me list. It's just a perfect movie for me.
Yeah. Matthew Lillard rules.
Yeah.
Skeet rules. Rose...
Byrne?
Wait. Rose Byrne was in X-Men. Rose McGowan. Rose McGowan was awesome. Yeah, movie rules. Perfect. We'll do a deeper dive later.
Yeah, we don't really need to say much more now. It's the reason it's number 1. You know it. You've seen it.
You know it.
Hopefully.
You love it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, then, let's just talk a little bit more. We've kind of talked about it a bit, but Chris and I are of the opinion... Oh, I guess I don't want to speak for you, but...
Yeah.
We sort of feel like Scream 1 through 3 should be taken as a trilogy, and Scream 5, 6, and 7 will be a trilogy, with 4 being this kind of connector movie. I don't know if they do that with intention. I would like to think they do. At least somewhat. It felt like maybe they didn't know they were going to get to do 5 and 6, or that they would approach it the way that they did. So the way that I do assess it is Scream 4 is like a 4th installment or whatever.
Well, you've made the case, and I think this is correct. I don't know how much they did this consciously, because I do think you are just like, you can't think about what's going to happen with a movie. You just have to make a movie, and like get permission to make the next movie. So yeah, it probably wasn't too conscious, but like you made the case that with Scream 5, by calling it Scream, that's the restarter trilogy. And then the rules that Mindy lays out in 5 and 6 for a requel and a franchise, which I don't have like under my fingers quite yet, to use musician's term. I don't really remember those rules, but like she makes a convincing case when she lays them out, and it like that I think is the movies making the case that 1 through 3 is a trilogy, 4 is a connector, and 5 and 6 are. Yeah. 5 and 6 are the beginning of a new trilogy. We'll see where 7 goes. We have speculation scheduled for later, so we won't talk about 7 just yet. But the way we want it to be is we would see the Carpenter sisters one more time. Yep. Maybe, I don't know, actually fighting the real ghost of Billy Loomis. I don't know what it would be. But,
so I had this revelation, I don't know if it's a revelation, but when the credits rolled on Scream 4 in my most recent rewatch, which we just rewatched all of them, it just occurred to me, I was like, oh yeah, dummy, the movie's called Scream 4. It's not called Scream. It spends the whole movie talking about reboots, talking about House of Wax, My Bloody Valentine, all that stuff that had been being made in the early 2000s, the reboots. It talks about it. It gives you rules for reboots. It uses the term, I'm pretty sure it uses the term Screamquel. I'm almost certain that they say those words in there. And then the credits roll, and you've realized Emma Roberts is not your new Sydney. This is not a reboot. She was the killer, and you dum-dum, it's called Scream 4. Because it's the 4th movie. It's not the new one. And so then when they decide to reboot it, arguably all the reboots after Scream 4 made all that commentary were better. I mean, like, I would say, who knows if that's like actual, people were like, damn, we got to be better. But like after that, our reboots have gotten better. I talked about Evil Dead, and like that's a better reboot than what we would have gotten, I think, in 2007 or something. Yeah.
Yes, we've talked, I think, both on and off mic, and we will talk in the future about like the 2000s, not the greatest decade of horror, not the total wasteland I think it gets painted as, but like not the greatest decade for horror. And sort of post like Scream 4 and Cabin in the Woods, like a switch flipped. Yep.
It was like Scream 4 happened, Cabin in the Woods happened, and it was like, okay, now horror is really about
We're going to make horror good now. And of course, like, part of that is like, Jordan Peele started making horror movies. There's only one Jordan Peele. Yeah. There's, part of it is, studios, like the middle class movie kind of died. Like studios either are making like Marvels and Star Wars and Star Treks and stuff, but horror movies don't cost a lot of money. And since horror has such a rabid fan base, which is I think something we'll talk about with Haunt Season star Adam Hinkle, you get like diehards going to the theater a lot. So horror is a safe investment. So I think that's part of why there's been an explosion in good horror. But like, yeah. The intertextual reason, the reason they'll talk about in college courses is Scream laid out those rules for reboots, and everybody else got their act together.
Well, cool. Yeah, I guess let's try and start wrapping up and talk about Scream 7, maybe hopes and dreams, anything. Since the two stars, in my opinion, aren't returning for Scream 7, unfortunately.
Yeah, my hopes for Scream 7 are a Free Palestine and the Carpenter sisters back, but I don't think we're getting either of those.
Yeah, exactly. Had it been those two, this is what my wife and I talk about, is we would want it to be Sam.
As the killer, like she just snaps. We've
gotten to see, because it's been so cool getting to see her go hard. Like when Sam gets a knife in her hand, I cheer for sure. Yeah, I know something.
She loves it too. She relishes it.
like you said, I don't think we're gonna get that, which is a bummer. But Sydney's coming back.
That's a positive. Sydney's coming back, and whoever's directing. Oh, Williamson's coming back
Yeah,
to
he's
write
back
it. Yeah.
for it. I don't know. Who knows about the rumors and stuff? There was a director dropped out and said the experience was really bad.
Right.
So that's a bummer.
That's what I read. Yeah.
I don't know if they'll do this, but I wouldn't be unhappy if for whatever reason they just shot for the moon and made Sydney the killer in the seventh one.
That'd be fun. Yeah.
I mean, it might have to be like Scream's done forever. But I just if you do something like that, I just feel I don't know.
I do think that with the Zionist argument for not bringing back the Carpenter sisters, Scream is going to have to take a break after 7. I think as a franchise, and I think it will have to go dormant for 8 to 10 years and come back when there's a talented enough director and writer team to
Start the third trilogy.
start a third trilogy up the way it should be,
or make another connector movie.
Yeah, but I think to end this whole arc, Dewey's dead, but Gale is not. Sydney is not. I do feel like there's a little bit of unresolved Stu Macher stuff they could dredge up. I think there's. I want to see. Mostly what I want to see is something that satisfyingly makes this a second Scream trilogy.
Yeah,
but as related to the first.
That's because I don't know. Are they signed on? Randy's niece and nephew.
I think they are.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're signed on.
So if we see those characters still, even without the Carpenter sisters, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think a break. Fast and the Furious should have taken a break after 7, and they didn't.
Yeah.
And I think a satisfying trilogy resolution and then a break. That's what I want.
Well, very cool. I think that concludes our first Scream talk.
That's our first Scream talk.
It seems natural to end it with "Be Right Back."
I am here with Chloe N. Clark. Chloe is the author of some pretty cool books of fiction and poetry, including but not limited to Patterns of Orbit, Collective Gravities, Escaping the Body, Your Strange Fortune, and Every Song of Vengeance. Chloe is the founding co-editor-in-chief of the best literary magazine in the world, Cotton Xenomorph. When she's not writing, she also runs writing classes and reads books. Your bio's great. That's a lot of writing, a lot of reading, and pulling from this paragraph on your website. What we're here to talk about today. She has a background in monster theory and has done scholarship on the history of horror, which is what we're doing today. Chloe, how are you?
I am doing well. How are you doing?
Good. I'm excited to learn about swamp creatures, which you've taught me about before in a online writing workshop. You frequently teach online writing workshops that hypothetical listeners of this podcast should sign up for. The first one of which I took was about monster theory. A little bit background, how would you define monster theory?
So, monster theory, and some people take a different tactic with it, but the way that I approach monster theory is as a study of the way we've used monsters in our stories and communications throughout time, almost inevitably as a way to kind of separate groups of people away from us or use rhetoric often in a harmful way. More recently, we've seen kind of a reclaiming of the idea of monsterhood that I'm thinking will push monster theory in interesting ways in the future.
Yeah. There are, if you watch, the original Universal monster movies, and of course read older texts like Dracula, for instance, or Frankenstein. Yeah, you see monsters presented in a lot different light than we might see them in. Not to be too corny, but Twilight is an example of a monster being a hero as opposed to solely a destructive force. We have not seen a reclamation yet of swamp creatures, unless you count The Shape of Water. Did you see The Shape of Water?
I did see The Shape of Water, yes.
What do you think of The Shape of Water?
Um, I certainly liked elements of it. Overall, it wasn't my favorite film, but I appreciated it. I think what to say.
That's kind of where I come down on that one, and some other Guillermo del Toro movies. Like I definitely feel that way about what's the Gothic Haunted Mansion one with
Oh,
Loki in it? Crimson something or other.
Peaks, Crimson
Crimson
Peaks.
Peak, yeah. It's a beautiful movie with great performances. I personally can't really get through it, but
Yeah,
I'm always like, it's cool that like such a great representation of Gothic literature exists in
yeah.
film and like a mainstream film. And I feel kind of that way about The Shape of Water, which I found out recently grew out of him trying to make a Creature from the Black Lagoon remake.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I just randomly came across that on Wikipedia the other day. In your opinion, what is it about swamp creatures that makes it so hard to make a mainstream movie in any year after 1963 or whenever the last Black Lagoon movie was made?
I think, and I'm a Swamp Thing fan, so no Swamp Thing
I do
erasure
like
here,
Swamp Thing.
please.
Yeah, yeah, the 81, the 1980s one. Yeah, that's a good movie. Yeah.
I think probably a little of it comes down to people are still kind of relatively icked out by the swamp. I think if you say swamp,
Yeah,
people are like, oh, the mosquitoes and mud and stuff, which obviously is kind of an inaccurate representation of swamps or bayous or anything of that sort.
right. Yeah, beautiful ecosystems, swamps and bayous. Another thing I recently realized from various readings, I did not know that like big cats like to hang out in swamps. Like swamps are traditionally
Oh,
like
that's interesting.
homes to panthers and things like that, which is why we have the Florida Panthers hockey team, I guess.
I guess that makes sense, like the access to fish and stuff if you're a big cat, probably.
Right. And I
Nice.
guess the heat doesn't bother you or the mugginess doesn't bother you if you're a big cat. I don't know. I don't know how they work. Who knows how cats think? Let's back up a little bit to an intro to swamp creatures. What would be like, not, I don't want you to give away your trade secrets or anything like that, but can you give us a little like Monster Theory 101 on swamp creatures?
I think my kind of assessment is, again, going back to one of those primary fears, fear of the unknown, at least like Creature of the Black Lagoon, something like that. There were still like areas that were somewhat untouched or unfully explored, and at least people weren't making their homes like directly next to them or something. So I think there's some element of that. But also like just the idea in general of something that comes from a place that's at once familiar, like it's Earth, but they're an alien kind of creature to us, I think always hits a chord with people, right? Like aliens are one thing that's scary and we can think of outer space as unknown, but like something big under the water that's on our planet that has a certain extra kind of fear.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. People always you see people talk about the bottom of the ocean being scarier than space and certainly more unknown from a
Mhm.
scientific perspective than space. And like a swamp or a wetland or a bog or a bayou, that kind of has all of that, especially like when, certain areas are so shrouded in like trees and stuff that it's hard to get into or whatever. But it's like right in our backyard as opposed to out in the ocean. Um,
Mhm.
This is something that if I thought about it earlier, I would have texted you about it and we could have prepped. So if this maybe seems like a question you don't have like information on, this I'm not trying to be a gotcha question, but have you come across in your studies anything relating our sort of fictive and literary swamp creatures, bayou monsters, whatever, and the fact that swamps were a place of refuge for runaway enslaved people, for indigenous tribes dodging white settlers, things like that. Is there any of that in the literature that you know
Not
of?
not that I know of, but I bet there's a connection there just based on all of the rest of monster theory and how it works.
Yeah, as soon as you said like the fear of the unknown, but it's on the earth, that's kind of like where my brain went. And it was like, oh man, this is something, again, if I thought a little bit harder, we would have researched before we went on the air.
That's a super, you should definitely research that though, because that sounds like it could be a very interesting kind of like paper out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else on swamp creatures?
Um, Well, I think just in general, be nice to your swamps is important.
Yes, they
They're
function as the
very like
kidneys of
important.
lakes. Yeah.
Yeah. Extremely important ecosystems. And I think the other thing, as far as swamp creatures, if we want to look at it from a positive light, being afraid of the unknown sometimes about certain areas protects certain areas. So like that's one positive we can think from swamp creatures if they're keeping people away from those places. I The flip side of that obviously is that certainly companies throughout history have used that to their advantage, like make up something about this area, people don't like go there and we ruin it. But so
Yeah,
there's a
the
flip side.
the great strength of the real monster, the colonialist project, is
Yes.
that you can always invent technology to destroy land for profit if you want to. But yeah, that's a great point that when an ecosystem is like feared by humans, that certainly protects it from our destructive habits. Yeah, yeah. Be nice to your swamps. I like ending on that message. Be nice to your swamps.
Welcome back to Scream Talk. We're going to do a little interview with Adam and talk to him about Scream. And I think we'll just leave you the floor. You can rank, talk about your relationship with Scream, whatever you want to do. We'll kind of just let you go with it.
All right, cool. I'm a bit of a purist, so I'm gonna have to say the initial Scream, the part one, was just like that's my favorite. I mean,
We're pretty sure it's a perfect movie.
Yeah.
Like a 10 out of 10 movie.
Yeah.
I mean, not just a horror movie. I think it's just a perfect movie. It's so satisfying.
And
Yeah.
I think for most franchises, unless we ever do like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, I think every franchise, the first movie is going to be my favorite.
Yeah. I don't know. Some people pick Nightmare. Some people would pick Dream Warriors. I think your brother would pick. Dream Warriors is number one.
Yeah, Nightmare is tougher. Yeah.
yeah, it's so hard because it's like I want to say the first one in the Nightmare on Elm Street series, and followed by 3, but I think those two are just kind of like even for me.
Tied.
Because
Yeah.
the third one was also the first one that I had seen, and
Yeah.
I'd seen it. That
That'll
was like
do
my
it.
first like horror movie that I had sat through.
Sure.
And so it's got a specific nostalgia for me, but just in terms of sheer storytelling, it's like it's so good and absolutely on par with the first.
There you go. Well,
Well, to keep it in the Craven world,
Let's
and
keep it
to
in Craven
take
world,
it back
man.
to my nostalgia. What's your Scream 2? I know you were there for it.
Oh man, Scream 2. I like that one not quite as much as the first, but I have this story about Scream 2. I was waiting for so long to see this movie in the theater, and in the lobby, I was in the fucking lobby of the theater to go see Scream 2, and some asshole kid is talking to one of the people working concessions about the killers in the movie. So I literally have it just spoiled for me right before I go in and see it.
oh my God.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's I mean, The Simpsons definitely have a bit about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's not the Simpsons
Homer
where
spoiling
Homer comes out
Star
and is like,
Wars.
I can't believe Darth Vader was Luke's dad or
Yeah.
something. Yeah. That's
Spoiler, Chris.
Oh yeah, sorry. Spoiler for Star Wars.
But yeah, it was the worst. I was so pissed, guys. It was the
Oh,
worst.
but I'll say this: you have an excellent Scream 2 mug.
I do. I actually have Scream 1 and Scream 2 mugs,
Yeah,
actually.
they're wonderful. Mm-hmm. Back when we were a real country, made stuff like that.
Yeah, I still use them to this day.
I've used the Scream 2 mug before. Yeah, no.
So is that your 1 and 2 ranking? Is 1 and 2?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't have like that many issues with the later ones. I mean, 3, when I first saw it, I really wasn't that hip to it. And part 4, I was like, it was kind of okay. I think I do need to revisit part 4 because it's been a really long time.
I'll say you do.
Yeah. 4 rewards multiple watches. You're not the first person I've heard have that take on 4. I certainly thought 4 was just okay the first time I saw it, and then that was my first time barreling through the whole of the later movies, and so doing a second rewatch of 4, I was like, yeah, there's a lot going on here that I like. No one has quite a high opinion as Brendan does.
I love 4.
Scream 5 is actually pretty solid. Like in terms of the later ones, I actually really like Scream 5.
Yeah. Where do you put 5 and 6? Because you've seen 6. That's the one where they go. It's it's parallel as Scream 2. They go to college in New York.
Yeah, I would probably put Scream 5 probably right below Scream 2.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
All right.
Well, any hopes and dreams for Scream 7, or any you want to air anything out about Scream in general?
I just want to see another one.
Yeah, that's how we feel.
Yeah.
Always just want to see another one.
Yeah. More Scream.
All right, well, be right back.
And now for a special guest edition of Scream Talk, we once again have Chloe and Clark. Chloe, how do you rank the Scream movies? What's your personal rankings there?
I do 1, 2, 4, 3. Of the newer ones, I haven't watched them as much. Like I've seen them, but I don't really care for them a ton.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay. Okay. So 1, 2, 4, 3, you said, and then 5 and 6 after that?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. And you don't care for the new ones. Fascinating.
I'm a Wes
Brendan and I
Craven
are.
girl.
You what now?
I'm a Wes Craven girl.
That's fair. That's very, that's hard to argue with. I just started watching the Nightmare movies, and they're so much better than I expected them to be. And then I was like, what did I think was going to happen? It's Wes Craven. So yeah, what is the floor is yours. You've got like 2 minutes to riff on Scream. Anything you want to get off your chest about Scream? What do you got?
I think the Screams in general are great horror movies that hold up too, which I think is important. A lot of the kind of like humor about horror, the commentary on genre still like apply today, which I think is interesting and frustrating at the same time.
Yes.
But otherwise, extremely well acted. Nev Campbell I think, does an incredible job. All of the side actors are great, so I'm very positive about the Scream films.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that has been this edition of Scream Talk. We'll have more Scream Talk next time on Scream Talk. That concludes this episode of the Lazy and Entitled podcast. Thank you again to Chloe and Clark for joining us on this episode. Something we touched on, but I wanted to explain in a little bit more detail here, is Chloe does teach online asynchronous writing workshops. And if you, like me, don't totally know what the word asynchronous means, basically what class looks like is you get an email with a PowerPoint deck that's like a lesson, a reading for the day, and a writing prompt. And there's also a Slack channel where you and other workshop participants can go and discuss the day's lesson, can share your writing, and you can critique each other's writing. The first class I took with her was on monster theory. I shook the cobwebs loose on a couple of stories that I've been struggling with. My story, The Wolfman, which was published in Cotton Xenomorph before I was on staff there. Got some good edits from that class. My story, The City Installed Red Light Cameras, which was published recently in Wrong Turn Lit. Got some good edits from that class. The second class I took with her was on science fiction, which isn't my usual genre, but I thought would be a fun way to push myself and challenge myself, get out of my comfort zone a little bit. And yeah, it's inspired another short story manuscript that I'm working on. None of the stories published yet. It's still kind of in its infancy, but Chloe's that good of a teacher that got me, who is not a sci-fi writer, to challenge myself to put together a sci-fi manuscript. So yeah, check out Chloe's website, chloenClark.com, or follow her on Blue Sky. She's at Pints and Cupcakes, and whenever she's taking a workshop, take a workshop.
We are once again so thrilled that we were able to do a nice Halloween special for all you good ghosts and ghouls at home.
This will be the last one of 2024, or will it? There's always one more scare. The killer always pops back up. Friday the 13th, part whatever, is called the final chapter, but it's not. You never know. Is there a part 3 coming?